Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Welcome everyone to the meeting, which is being held at County Hall, North Allerton today. This is a live stream broadcast, so the meeting you'll be able to view this meeting on the Combined Authority YouTube channel. Remember everyone to use the microphones when speaking, and if you could turn off the microphone once you've stopped speaking as well. Thank you very much for that. Going on to agenda item 1, which is apologies for absence today. Are there any apologies today? Thank you. Thank you very much. Item number 2, minutes of the meeting held on the 2nd of October 2024. Are members content that the minutes are correct of the record? If so, can we take a vote on this, please? Thank you very much.
Unanimous, thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Declarations of interest is agenda. Can't remember words out today. Agenda item number 3. Any declarations of interest? If so, are there any today? No. No. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Agenda item 4. Exclusion of public. It is proposed that the Combined Authority exclude the public from the meeting during consideration of agenda item 14, which is staffing matters. This is on the grounds that it involves likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in the paragraphs 1 and 2 of Part 1 of the Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act of 1972. Can I just check that all members are in agreement, by the way, of this to exclude the public in a vote? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Public participation is agenda item number 5. There are no registered speakers for today and no questions registered in accordance with the Combined Authority Constitution. Thank you very much. Agenda item number 6, just a bit of an update from me, if that's okay with everyone. Just to sort of go through a little bit of brief of what's gone on since the last meeting. I've held meetings with partners such as Transport for the North, actually here in North Allerton, to discuss connectivity issues right across the region. Met with the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister to discuss government ambition for devolved powers and further growth in our region with the Regions and Nations meeting in Edinburgh. Today marked 6 months since I took office as Mayor of York and North Yorkshire, and I just want to say that it's a huge privilege to be able to hold this post, and I thank everyone around this table, around this room today, and everyone else who's worked the Combined Authority over the last 6 months and previous to that of my coming into office. So I thank you very much for that. Over that time, we're proud of the work we've achieved, so making sure programmes have got off the ground and got started with £27.5 million of mayoral challenge funds to support our high streets and decarbonisation targets and innovation and business skills. 17 million to ensure the delivery of over 1,100 homes through the Brownfield Fund, and funding enabled to support local authority projects such as the Selby Station Gateway and the York Cultural Passport Programme. Working closely with government to produce our local plan for the growth of which will support our growing sectors and areas that are vitally important to our local economy, such as hospitality, tourism and small businesses. Finally, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the members for their support over the past 6 months, as well as Joe Coles, my Deputy Mayor for Police, Fire and Crime, and the Combined Authority, as well as Councillor Kilbane, as for my Deputy Mayor, for all their hard work and support over the last 6 months. It has been much needed and greatly received. So I thank you very much all for your work so far, and long may it continue. Agenda item 6 is the York and North Yorkshire Combined Authority strategic growth priorities, and I will hand over now to Andrew Lehman, Head of Strategy, who will present this for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll just run through some key elements of this, but primarily it's a report that sets out the need for some further resource to support the work of the growth plan and develop further the growth priorities, in particularly to invest in developing those proposals further to enable the Combined Authority and partners to lever in further investment into York and North Yorkshire. So a bit of background is at the last meeting of the Combined Authority, we agreed a series of growth priorities, sector growth priorities. They've been submitted to government as part of the process in terms of developing the growth plan. Through that, we've started to identify a number of partners that we're currently working with that are helping us to develop further the types of projects and programs and the mechanisms for delivery that we will need to put in place. And so we want to build on that and look further at developing a number of streams, particularly around the food and farming sector, and developing that plan, setting out and mapping our opportunity around clean energy. Also to start to look at developing a case for a model for supporting an innovation ecosystem or an innovation accelerator within the sub-region, and developing that business case much further, and exploring the potential to look at further digital infrastructure models and developing further our sectoral skills, and developing a strategy around how we can get some accelerated development. So these fitting into the 5 growth priorities that we agreed at the previous meeting. As part of this, the report sets out just a justification of needing to put some resources in quite quickly if we need to commission further work or provide further resources to develop those business cases and develop those propositions, so we're in the best place possible to achieve that further investment. So that's set out in the report as part of the ask. So the recommendation to the combined authority is to look at an allocation of £500,000 from the Mayoral Investment Fund to support that activity, which is linked clearly to the growth plan, developing those project pipeline proposals and raising the capacity that we need to develop it to business case and Treasury Green Book compliant, so we can enable further investment into the combined authority area. This will be done obviously in conjunction with 2 authorities, and some discussions have already been on that. So any questions?
Thank you very much, Andrew. Any questions for Andrew on that? Okay, Councillor Les.
Thank you, David. And I'm sure the answer is going to be positive, but just for reassurance sake, once we start to do this work, once we have the new director in place, once we've commissioned work from the consultants where we don't have that capacity within ourselves, is it then the intention that progress will be reported to this combined authority board? And also we actually have at least 2 of our scrutiny board members here with us this afternoon. Will it also be fed into the scrutiny process as well? As I say, I'm expecting the answer to be a positive, but just for reassurance, can you confirm that, please, David?
Yeah, absolutely. More than happy to. Obviously, this is going to be a fast-paced work, and having obviously this funding will free up the resources, the capability to be able to deep dive into some of these proposals and plans, and having that engagement and having the members and the 2 scrutiny boards involved in that all the way through, I think is absolutely key to it. We want to be able to be very transparent and open working, and making sure that all members are happy at every step of the way. So absolutely, Councillor Les, yeah. Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Dudd.
I suppose it's really directed at Andrew, how the deployment of this £500,000 happens. We've heard about consultants and any resources we've got inside, but there's a wealth of resources that are not in North Yorkshire, and I'm sure York. So I very much hope that our own internal economic development teams can help with that. And of course, £500,000 isn't chicken feed, so I'm sure that we'll be recompensing them for the time as well.
Yeah, we'd be looking at all ways in which we can get the right resources and support that we need, and already we've had discussions with officers of the 2 authorities to start to discuss where that could be gained from. So absolutely, yeah.
Like to come in there as well.
Thank you, Mayor, and that's really good to hear, Andrew, and just to support Councillor Dudd's comments, really, because there is already great work going on within the local authorities and the combined authority, and I think this is a question of building on and expanding rather than reinventing. So it's good to hear, and let's make the most of the resources that we've got.
So no more questions? Can I ask for a mover and a seconder on the recommendations on page 19 of the agenda pack? A mover?
Moved.
and a second, and then to a vote on that from members. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for that, and thank you for presenting that, Andrew. I think I'm going to be coming back to you in a minute, Andrew, so don't go anywhere. Agenda item 8 is Adult Skills Fund and Strategic Skills Plan. Again, this will be presented by Andrew Lehman, Head of Strategy. Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So this report really sets out our initial year approach to the budget allocation for the Adult Skills Fund, which and the free courses for jobs, which, as you're aware, is being devolved to the combined authority from August of 2025. So there's been a lot of work to date on this, and reports the skills plan was reported to a previous meeting of this combined authority and agreed. So just to outline some key parts of this report, within that strategic skills plan for the Adult Skills Fund, there was 3 methods set out, or 3 levels really set out in terms of the way in which the allocation would be provided and allocated, I should say. And what we've done is built on the existing, so to have some continuity from the existing Adult Skills Fund, we've built on that to set out how the allocation will be subdivided. Obviously, the allocation at the moment is based on the best estimate from previous years, because we don't know exactly what the funding allocation will be, but we think it will be around about 11.56 million. So in part 4.1, there is a table that just sets out the 8 sort of areas where the allocation has been subdivided into. The first one setting out the management fee, so the fee for running the Adult Skills Fund that we've put at 4.5%, and there's a breakdown of that further into the report. That's on par with other combined authorities in terms of the level. The second part is just indicating that there will be what we call continuing learners, which is the second part, which is being put at 4%, which is really around current learners that get access to Adult Skills Fund, which are a sort of given. So we take that off. And then we get to the grant allocation under the methods 1 and 2. So the methods 1 and 2 are primarily where we've been trying to prioritise our learning providers to become more local. So we want to prioritise those providers that either operate within, are based within York and North Yorkshire or operate within York and North Yorkshire in a fairly major way. Obviously, we have colleges now that are part of other groups. So it's for example, Harrogate College is owned by a Leeds College group, so they would be part of that 1 and 2 providers. So there's an allocation provided for those, and we're sort of suggesting, because that amount hasn't been altered for some time, but we increase that amount by 10%, which is set out in the percentage increase under 6. There's then the free courses for jobs allocation, which is under the methods 1 and 2, which is around 309,000, and again allowing a growth within that method 1 and 2. What that leaves at the end under 8 is the actual amount that will go out for full procurement under those other providers, and so some of those are the private learning providers and others, which is 2 million. So it's just really setting out how the allocation will be broken down. It's very similar to how it works at the moment, but we've put in a slight more of an emphasis on supporting our local learning providers going forward. The report itself sets out a bit more detail under each one, as I've explained, and the recommendations are to approve those allocations so we can move forward on to the first year of the fund. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew, for that report. Any questions there for Andrew on that at all? Would you like to come in there, Pete? Come on.
So thank you, Mayor, and really just to thank Andrew, Vicky, and all the staff who've worked so hard on this, as well as all of the stakeholders that have been engaged through the process. This is really the tip of an iceberg for all the work that's gone on underneath in terms of developing the adult skills strategy for the combined authority, and that is work that is ongoing. I would like to thank very much the stakeholders from all sectors across the region who fully engaged and provided their expertise that has allowed us to get to the point where we can now continue with the Adult Skills Fund within the Combined Authority in a very smooth transition from previous funding streams. So far, so good, and that is down to the hard work of Andrew, Vicky and the team and all the stakeholders who've had input into this. So just thanks to all of those.
Thank you for that, Councillor Kilbane. Yeah, I think that has to be echoed. There's been a huge amount of work in that, and that engagement with stakeholders in particular, and to really bring them on board and really bring them into the whole process has been key to that. So thank you for the team. Councillor Les?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, I echo what Peter's just said. I certainly welcome the support that is there for local learning providers, because that is going to help the local economy in itself. This is no criticism of Andrew's report, but it is rather dry. But of course, it's all about the budget and then the process of spending the budget, etc. But if you think about what is underpinning all that, I mean, it is a very exciting opportunity. It's, you know, what this is going to achieve for 19 plus people, 19-year-old plus people, and we're going to need those people to achieve the objectives that we just agreed to in the previous report. So thank you for the report, Andrew, even if it is a bit dry.
I'm not going to apologise for it being dry. It's just a technical report that probably has to be dry in the context of what we need to get agreed. So, but I think if people want to see some other parts of this, I think refer to the skills plan and the action plans, which set out a lot more of that information that you talk about, Carl.
Yes, would you like to come in there, Councillor Dad?
Just a quick question. I presume there's some evidence behind the necessity for these figures in the budget allocations. And secondly, as you would expect, particularly interested in, we'll call it back office costs, management fee, I think you've got it listed as. Is that comparing well in terms of indicators from other providers and authorities? Do we fare well? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, we do, and we've done a comparison with all the current MCAs and then also the combined authorities that will be receiving devolution on ASF at the same time. Obviously, if you compare it as percentages, as we put in the report, the likes of West Yorkshire only have a 2% management fee, but that's against a £70 million budget for their adult skills fund. 2%, yeah. But that's 2% against a £70 million scheme rather than we've got an £11 million scheme. So there is a sort of a minimum cost to delivering this, which pushes us to slightly higher percentage. But we are very similar to very allocations of similar areas that we've looked at in terms of the scale of the size of the fund in the pot.
Okay, so, any more questions for Andrew? Okay on that. So can I ask for, oh sorry Pete, sorry, I missed you there. Sorry. Oh, sorry, jumping in. Can I ask for moving a second for the recommendations on page 25 of the agenda pack, Mr. Kilbane?
Oh, that'll beat me. I'm happy to second then, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah. And can we move to a vote on that as well, please, from members? Thank you very much, and thank you once again for that piece of work, Andrew and the team there. Agenda item 9, governance even matters, presented by Paul, the governance and assurance manager on this.
Thank you, Mayor, and apologies to Councillor Les if you thought the last report was dry. You won't like this one. To some degree, this is another housekeeping report similar to the one that I brought to the last meeting, but it does cover a range of issues, so I think some of them probably require a little bit of introduction. The first substantive section of this is the calendar of meetings for 25-26, which members will find attached. There are two versions attached in the appendix. One is the list of meetings that are for members' approval, so the committees that we manage and administer. Another one which just illustrates some of the related committees and boards, particularly on the Office of the Policing, Fire and Crime side of the organisation, and also the Police Fire and Crime Panel, purely for information. It has been drafted in collaboration with the two councils in the area to make sure we avoid any key clashes. There may be one or two minor clashes which are unavoidable just due to the busy nature of the meeting calendars, but we've avoided the key ones where possible. So asking for approval of that calendar if members are content with that, and to ask to note that there's an additional meeting programmed in this municipal year for the 7th of November, which will be discussed further in the finance report later on in the agenda. To go slightly out of order in the report, it probably leads on to the section on the live consultation that's underway with government at the moment. This is a consultation that was launched on the 24th of October, seeking views on how the government might implement remote and proxy access to council and combined authority meetings, amongst other public body meetings. The messaging within the consultation appears to be that regulations will be tabled that will allow remote access, but the government are keen to get views from individual members and from organisations around what that should mean at a local level, what circumstances might dictate or necessitate proxy or remote attendance, and how that might be implemented locally or nationally. So asking for consideration from members about whether to provide a consultation response on behalf of the combined authority, and if so, the manner in which you wish to do so. I would propose the most straightforward way, given the short timescale of the consultation, is that be delegated to the monitoring officer in consultation with all of the combined authority members to come up with a satisfactory response. Moving back to the next section of the report is two further committee appointments. We had one at the last meeting. We have two more. One is for the North Yorkshire Green Party to appoint Councillor Kevin Foster in place of Councillor Arnold Warnacan. And the next is for Councillor Bob Packham from North Yorkshire Council's Labour Party in place of Councillor Steve Shaw-Wright. That will be effective with the 1st of January. That's purely for scheduling purposes and attendance at the next meeting. Both of them are like-for-like political appointments. There are no effects on political proportionality or anything to that extent. The final element of the report is a recommendation from the Combined Authorities Audit and Governance Committee, which met recently, just wishing to extend the level of consultation that they're subject to with any changes to the Constitution. The committee were quite mindful that there is a necessity to sometimes bring changes at short notice where they're dictated by national policy or by the implementation of new devolved functions and so on. But they just ask that in circumstances where there isn't time to bring a formal report to committee, that they be consulted by email, which I think officers agree would be perfectly practical and pragmatic. So the recommendations for those four elements are all set out at section 12. Happy to take any questions or comments from members. Otherwise, over to you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Paul. Any questions there for Paul? Would like to come in there, Councillor Dad?
Yeah, I want to just very quickly speak to the live consultation from the government. I don't think it's appropriate for us to get into a big, long convoluted debate today about how a scheme of remote working may or may not look like. I think the strong message that we should be sending back to government is how we run our business should be our business. And I would strongly support a response in that vein, so it leaves all options open for us to include or not in our constitution. I don't think it's the business of Whitehall. And just for the record, I am not in favour of 100% remote meetings. I think there's value in face-to-face as well, but that is for another day, in my view.
Thank you, Councillor Dad. Yes, Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to add to that I totally agree. I think that any organisation that brings people together to participate in the democratic process from such a broad geographical area, particularly as ours, 3,000 square kilometres or miles, 3,000 square miles, which is a very long distance for some people to get to meetings of various types, that the ability to decide how is best for them to participate in that and be able to participate fully is really important. And I don't think anybody is insinuating at all that there would be 100% remote meetings anywhere, in fact, but it's having that flexibility to allow people to participate how they need to on an ad hoc basis should something come up that means it's very hard for them to attend in person. I think that's only right. Thank you.
Agree on that, Councillor Douglas, as well. Councillor Lesbridge coming up.
Can I move on to another topic then? I think there's agreement amongst us about the consultation. I think at the last meeting, excuse me.
That's okay.
Yeah. At the last meeting, I think I raised the issue about the appointments having to come here, which have been, in effect, they've been made by the constituent authorities. And whether it was necessary for them to come here. But having looked at the calendar of meetings now, we are meeting on an almost monthly basis. So I suppose it doesn't actually delay anything in that. So I still wonder why it has to be ratified here. But if that's the constitution, that's the constitution. But at least it's not going to delay things because we are meeting so regularly.
Thank you, Councillor Les. Any other points for anyone else on that? Happy? So can we ask for move and a second on the recommendations on page 30? Thank you, Councillor Douglas. Second, thank you. And move to a vote. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Agenda item 10, granting consent for York and North Yorkshire Combined Authority borrowing powers. Agenda item 10 will be presented by Rachel Antonelli, the monitoring officer. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. This report relates to seeking consent to the making of regulations by central government to provide the Combined Authority with borrowing powers in line with the devolution deal and scheme leading to the creation of the Combined Authority. Section 3 of the report provides background to the creation of the Combined Authority with further details around the deal within Section 4. Whilst legislation is in place to create the Combined Authority, the government's legislative procedures mean that the borrowing powers for all Combined Authority functions must be conferred on the Combined Authority by a separate statutory instrument. In order to facilitate this, the consent of the Combined Authority and North Yorkshire and City of York councils must also be obtained. Securing borrowing powers will allow the Combined Authority to borrow in promoting its functions, policies and priorities, and will provide a mechanism to allow for delivery of priorities across the region. Within the financial implications at Section 6, it's confirmed that the maximum amount of borrowing will be subject to a borrowing cap of 43 million, which has been agreed by HM Treasury and is based upon the existing capital financing requirement of police and fire combined, as there are currently no plans for the Combined Authority to borrow in relation to its wider powers. Recommendation can be found on page 38 of the agenda pack. It's recommended that the Combined Authority give consent and delegate to the Chief Executive the power to consent to the making of regulations by central government to provide the Combined Authority with borrowing powers. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Any questions for Rachel on that, Councillor Douglas?
Thanks, Mayor. It's not a question. It's just a comment, really. That I'm really glad to see this coming through today, because this shows that the Combined Authority is moving to the next stage in its evolution. And I think that's really important for the success of the organisation and continuation of the fantastic work that has already been done. And I know we're all looking forward to in the future. And borrowing and being able to capitalise some of that gain share and make the money go further and bring in private investment due to the ability to participate in more projects is really important. And as we move to a position where we have our business board in place and everybody is starting to look to what do we support and where do we go next, this is a hugely important step, and I really recommend that we approve this today. So thank you for that, everybody.
Thank you very much for your comment there, Councillor Douglas. Yes, would you like to come in there, Councillor Dadd?
Yeah, thank you. I support the report, but I think it'd be useful for the benefit of the public and perhaps others to have just a bit of narrative verbally about what checks and balances would there be in place should we as an authority decide we wish to borrow. I don't know, we might want to buy a hotel or something of that nature. But no, on a serious note, I think, you know, this isn't an open-ended check for the mayor to run off and take half a bill from, you know, the Public Works Loan Board, is it?
It's not. Do you want to come in that, Rachel? Maybe Mike, I'm just going to bring in Mike Russell to explain a bit more on that, if that's okay, Councillor.
Thanks, Chair. So in the context of our borrowing, all public bodies are bound by the Prudential Code for borrowing in any case, and the borrowing cap that comes as part of the borrowing powers that we get as an additional control on top of that. So we're only really allowed to borrow for viable capital projects for the authority, and our constitution requires all of those capital projects to come through this forum in order for those to be approved. So typically, if we have a long-term view of what we're going to do, that would come through the budget cycle, which you would approve. If it was something that came up mid-year, it would come as a standalone paper to this committee for approval.
Yeah, happy? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You're right. Any more questions on that piece there? So can I ask for a move and a seconder for the recommendations on 38, page 38? Thank you.
Seconded.
Thank you too. And can I go to a vote, please? And can we go to a vote, please? Thank you. It's a very simple process usually. I could tell. Agenda item 11, a finance update, which will be presented by Mike Russell, Section 73 officer. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Chair. So this is quite a full report because it's a roundup of a number of financially relevant points. So I'll take you through fairly carefully in terms of what it says. In terms of purpose, the first purpose is to present a proposal to the Combined Authority for the budget setting cycle for next year. There's also an update on the Combined Authority's financial position for the first half of this current financial year. And that includes a request for some adjustments to the budget as funding streams have come through the Combined Authority that we didn't necessarily expect to come through us. We thought they would otherwise go through the member authorities. So linked to that, there is a request for an approval to allow us to further delegate some of our transport powers such that we can pass down capital funding to our member authorities. That capital funding was already in their budgets, so we're just facilitating existing plans. I think in terms of the budget cycle, the cycle that members will have been familiar with for 2024-25 involved the Combined Authority before it joined up with the former Office of Police, Fire and Crime and the Fire Authority. That transition has meant that some powers that previously sat within those authorities now vest in the Mayor and Deputy Mayor. And there's a particular need for the Mayor to raise a general precept to support fire because the Fire Authority no longer exists and there is no specific fire precept. That in turn leads to a requirement to carefully sequence the Combined Authority's budgeting meetings. And as Paul mentioned in his earlier report, there is a requirement to have an additional Combined Authority meeting in early February, which allows us to agree the precept for fire and get that to the local authorities in good time such that they can complete their budgeting processes and move things onto the council tax billing cycle. And there's a summary of that timetable in Appendix 1 to the report. In terms of financial position, I've split that up into the two aspects of our delivery, which are the core operating costs and the programmes that the Combined Authority is running with. Overall, our core operating position is running about 0.8 million behind in terms of lower cost than we would have expected it to be at this time of year. That's largely because the budget included a full establishment from day one, and we've grown through the year and built our establishment on that basis. And there were also some savings earlier in the year around some of the one-off setup costs of the authority and the mayoral elections that have been reflected in those numbers. I think the key point is at paragraph 5.4, and that there's no expenditure control issues that have been identified at this point, and we would expect our core budget to come within the budget envelope that was set at the start of the year, and potentially for there to be some savings against that. In terms of our programmes, the key message around programmes is that you'll see in the table in the report that the income has increased significantly from what we'd expected at the start of the year. A large proportion of that relates to 38 million of transport funding that we now need to passport through to member authorities. There's also been some rephasing on brownfield housing, as some of that income will be in next year, not this year. And we've recognised the fact that we've allocated some of our mayoral investment funding this year to projects through previous approvals that have come through this authority. Spending is behind the original profile, which was a flat phase budget in terms of programme delivery, but we're expecting that to accelerate through the second half of the year and to see strong delivery, particularly on brownfield housing and the net zero projects. Again, there's no budget or cost control issues identified within the programme delivery. The final point links to transport powers. The transport powers that the combined authority inherited in the mayor include now that we receive and will receive in the remainder of the year about 38.4 million of transport capital funding, which, as previously mentioned, was planned for and allocated originally to member authorities. So this paper requests that the committee first approve that we can further delegate transport powers to our member authorities in order for them to discharge those capital delivery requirements, and also that we can passport the funding to those authorities subject to an appropriate grant funding agreement. I think that's the crux of the report, and the recommendations are detailed fully at paragraph 13. And at that point, I'll open it to any questions.
Thank you very much, Mike, for that report. Any questions for Mike on that in particular? Oh, sorry. Elizabeth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not so much a question, more sort of comments. I mean, I welcome the idea that we're going to do this in subcategories, so that it's, for transparency. I wish you, Mr. Mayor, and the Deputy Mayor well in trying to sort out the fire budget, because that has been underfunded for years, not only by the last administration in government, but also the administration before. So that will be a challenge. The Police, Fire and Crime Panel used to have a special meeting with the Director of Finance, an informal meeting, to try and understand the nature of the police and fire budgets, and I just wonder whether that might be something that is afforded both the panel and perhaps to our scrutiny committees as well. And then the final comment, I particularly welcome the fact that we're going to keep transport as a separate budget area, because as we move forward with certain discussions that we're going to have about transport, I think it'll be very important to keep it separate, just so that there is that transparency. Because I think the transport budget is one area where we may well have differences of opinion, and just differences of opinion. Yeah.
Mike, did you want to come in on that second point, particularly on the preset running?
Yeah, councillors, I'll pick up on the preset point. We appreciate your comment around fire budgets, and we've been spending a lot of operational time recently and working out how we sequence this and go ahead with the precept. And through those meetings, Michael Porter, who is the Chief Finance Lead on Police and Fire, has offered to open up the meetings that he would already have with the Police, Fire and Crime Panel to other members, so we can make sure that's facilitated and the right people are at that meeting.
Thanks very much for that, Mike. Any more questions there? Are we okay there? So can I ask for a move and a second for recommendations on page 48 of the agenda?
Moved.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And I move to a vote on that. Thank you very much. Thank you for Mike for presenting that. Agenda item 12, the forward plan. Paul, did you want to come on this a little bit, just to sort of run over it slightly, and then we can go through it?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. There isn't too much to say on this version because very little has changed since the last meeting. So it's just to draw members' attention to particularly the meeting coming up on the 17th of January. It looks like quite a heavy agenda at the moment. I suspect one or two of these items may move as timelines are reviewed. But the particularly key issues are the ones that Mike has just raised, that there will be a report on budget planning at the 17th of January, and then there's the following meeting on the 7th of February around the precept. So they're the key ones I'd ask members to note. If anything changes drastically in the meantime, that will be republished and members will be informed.
Thank you very much for that, Paul. Members happy to approve the forward plan? Yeah. Thank you very much. Thanks for that, Paul. Agenda item 13, urgent business. I'm not aware of any. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, agenda item 14. We'll now go into a private session, and we'll be returning, and we won't be returning to a public meeting. This brings an end to the public meeting.